Wallah is someone who sells things.
A wallah is a tradesman, you would describe it, isn't it? I don't think there is an actual word in English that would, as far as I know, that would do it for you.
Like potato wallah means salesman of potatoes.
A tea wallah, and he would sell you tea.
Or film wallah is.
It's not just, if I may,
How you belong to a place.
Correct your Hindi.
My Hindi?
Wallah, yeah, wallah
unchallenged.
really means someone who's identified with something,
With the
not
profession.
just
With
selling
that
something.
profession,
No,
yeah.
it also means the one who is or the one who does.
Yeah, but it's
No?
also a profession.
It's a sort of masculine, I think. I don't think you can have a female wallah.
Like kabadi wallah.
So that's Shakespeare Wallah.
Yeah.
The
So one who sells
The
Shakespeare.
people who do Shakespeare. During the time when The Householder was being prepared to come out in America and then did come out and so forth, I got up this, I had an idea, it might be interesting to make a film about a troupe of actors going around India, putting on Western classics of one kind or another. I gave Ruth Jalvala that idea, and she said she liked the idea, and she saw possibilities in there for the film that finally became Shakespeare Wallah, but she didn't think that the premise of Indian actors going around India in a tour, in a touring company rather, really would be right, because those kinds of Indians who would know those kinds of plays and would be educated enough to put on such plays would never ever in a million years take up the life of sort of roving vagabond players going around India. It would be too low class, too on sort of a level of traveling gypsies in a caravan or something, and they just would not do that. But she said, since Felicity's own father and mother and sister had this troupe of Shakespearean players who went around India called Shakespeareana, she thought that within that kind of a context there was something interesting to be said.
I think they then read my father's diaries. He used to keep diaries. And Ruth read them and thought, well, it would be, perhaps, I think this was probably the beginning of their Anglo-Indian, the love of the India-British mixture that they then went on to make many films about. And they thought, no, well, let's make it about Shakespeareana, and about an English theatre company in India.
And so Ruth thought that this gave her something really to work with in terms of, as a sort of metaphor for the disappearance of English and Western culture, and because that had been exactly what happened to the Kendall family when they went around.
But in the old days, Mr. Buckingham, you would have been welcome not for 4, but 7, 8 performances. Nowadays, well, it's too many activities.
Yes, but surely Shakespeare is still in your curriculum, and these performances are very popular in schools and colleges, very helpful, I'm told.
The last days of the British Raj, there was great interest from everybody in seeing Shakespearean plays, and they had big audiences and they made money. But as time went on, between 1947 and 1964, when we made our film, that audience just dried up. And very, very few people were interested in seeing Shakespeare anymore. And by the time we made our film, they really had stopped touring, but they were still in India.
Geoffrey Kendall's Shakespeareana company had been touring out of England, and it was a typical British actor-manager theatrical company, a small company. They had their own actors who would do everything. They would do their own makeup, they would do their own costumes, they would make costumes, they would make properties, they would do the sets.
My father's company consisted of Indian actors, Irish actors. It was really a mixed match of actors and people that had just joined on the way. He had his base with his family. He had the leading lady was my mother, and second leading lady was my sister Jennifer, and then I was, odds body props. If he needed a boy or a page, I was it. And we just toured India from top to bottom. And he would just turn up in a Pune or Bombay and set off and go and visit people and say, look, I have 13 plays, 10 of Shakespeare and 3 of Bernard Shaw, would you like one this afternoon or tomorrow? He would put a show on in a drawing room, in a theatre, out of doors. And there was sometimes the most beautiful theatres in Simla, which is in the film, Shakespeare Wallah, is a Victorian theatre. Beautiful, beautiful Victorian theatre, where Kipling played, actually. Called the Gaiety Theatre, or cinemas in the front of a big screen, or anywhere. I mean, he didn't mind. He would any space at all, he would fill. And they just had this love affair with India.
They always laughed at all the jokes, cried at the right places. The most wonderful audience in the world.
When we were touring India, it would be difficult to describe in a sentence the difference, because we would be staying in a palace, literally in a palace, 1 month or 1 week. We would then go to a lovely guest house. We would then be in a hostel. We would then be sleeping on the floor somewhere because we'd run out of money. When we toured in Borneo at one point, we were so poor, my father, and we ended up in a rather down-market whorehouse, which was perfectly all right, except my mother used to have to plug all the holes in the doors because they had these little peepholes everywhere. I mean, it was bizarre, absolutely bizarre. I mean, it was just an extraordinary existence. And that's how the Shakespeare Wallah story started.
And so Ruth, she wrote that script, I think, quite quickly. I was in New York. She was in India, and we wrote back and forth. And I think within probably 6 months, she had a script, if not sooner.
Some of the characters were based on people that that were in the company. And I think Bobby was based on Frank Wheatley, who was a very eccentric and wonderful old gentleman who joined us when he was 70 and then retired at 75 and came back again. He kept coming back to join us. He had the shakes, so it was quite difficult. You could only play certain parts because he would hold on to things and shake like this. And I remember my father saying he was playing the Duke in The Merchant of Venice. He said, "Can you not do something about the shaking? Hold on to your belt." So he held on to his belt and he still shook. But he was great fun. I mean, he was an eccentric part of the company.
There's a funny smell in here.
It's a smell of decomposition.
Why do you always become so morbid when we come to the hills?
Oh, it's sitting here by myself, in this place, drinking this wretched, filthy stuff. Here, take it away.
When we were making The Householder, and I met the Kendall family, which included their youngest daughter, Felicity, who was then 14, I thought about her that I just had to make a movie with her. She was so charming and so quick-witted and intelligent, and she was a good little actress as far as I knew in her father's Shakespearean troupe, and I thought I just have to make a film with her.
I think either during or just after The Householder, I met Ismail and Jim.
And also the idea was that as we had come to know the Kendalls through The Householder, because Jennifer's married to Shashi Kapoor, there's a kind of a bond that had been established, a friendship between Ruth and Jennifer and Jim, myself, Shashi and Felicity, and we sort of regular visitors to their home, and
They were very close friends of Shashi and Jennifer, and I was always with Shashi and Jennifer because I was sort of hanging out with them as often as I could. And I remember Ismail taking us out to a movie and passing me one bag of crisps or something and saying, "I'm going to put you in a movie one day." And I thought, right, yes. And then eventually when they decided to make Shakespeare Wallah, Ismail said, "Well, I want you to play Lizzie." I think I have the contract, it was something like 75 rupees, which is about £2. I didn't have a choice, really. It's just one of those things that happened. I mean, even when you have a full-blown career, I don't think you have much choice when Ismail decides you're going to do something. But when you're 17 or 16 and he says you're going to be in a film, you just do it. And I was quite chuffed to be in a film with Ismail and Jim because it was going to be a lark. The people I knew all the actors. A few of the people in the film I didn't know, but I knew Em as well. I knew Madhu already. I had no experience of directors. The only director I knew was my father, who was of a very much, it's the way you speak, and it's in a theatre. Jim, I think, probably has still the same style, which is economic and gentle and unobtrusive but very firm, so that you feel that he knows what he wants you to do, and without you realizing it, you want to please him. You feel that he knows how he wants this film to go, and he'll guide you through that, but very delicately. But it was of all, it was lovely, it was great. I was with my family.
Because I had toured with Shakespeareana, I had been in close contact with the family. And then, of course, even after marriage, Felicity Kendall was very close to us and close to me and my wife, and would stay. So, I mean, I knew of her, but I had no idea that she would be so good. This girl with no experience in the movies was terrific. I was amazed. Felicity Kendall was stealing the show. It was her film. I thought it was her film.
For you, I'd give up anything. You only have to ask.
I think it was the first film that I ever kissed in, you see. And it had to be my sister-in-law. But it was a bit embarrassing for me. And I think it was, I realized that it would be very embarrassing for Felicity Kendall.
Well, I tell you this, the odd thing, you see, growing up in an acting family, it really doesn't, you don't actually take that on board any more than my sister playing Desdemona to my father. So it didn't actually occur to me that it was odd, because it was just more of the same, which was acting.
Then when we were doing the scenes, she was so good, and she would totally get involved in the character and forget her real self.
You know, you're quite arrogant at 17. You don't get nervous about anything. I really, I think, just sort of swan through it thinking it was fun. I'd been on the set of Shashi's films quite a few times, the Indian Bollywood films, and I thought it was quite cool.
Ready? 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, I had imagined Madhur Jaffrey all along as being one of the actors who would be in this troupe of Indian actors going around. And with the new arrangement of another kind of a troupe, a Shakespearean troupe going around, there was really no place for Madhur in that. But Ruth, in fact, was writing a part for a mistress who was a movie star, and so we thought that Madhur could play that part. Now, she's not exactly the your normal idea, or an Indian's normal idea of a kind of buxom and rather vulgar Indian film star. She was anything but that. When she arrived on the set, there was a distinct sense of disappointment on the part of the Indian crew, because she was so completely different physically, and in terms of personality and the way she spoke, everything about her, so different from their idea of what an Indian movie star ought to be. But she had certainly the kind of regal air and the sort of sense of command that an Indian movie star always has. And very soon she convinced everybody.
I mean, the budget was tiny. And I remember we were doing a scene in the middle of in the sitting room somewhere in Kasauli, and Ismail came rushing in saying, "There's mist on the hill, there's mist on the hill, pack up, we've got to all go up to the top of the hill because there's mist," because we couldn't afford to schedule it and wait for the mist. None of that David Lean stuff. Anyway, we got up and the mist had gone. And this happened a couple of times. Eventually we got up there with the mist and we did the scene with the mist.
But the mist was not a real mist. The mist was provided by some smoke bombs that the Indian Army gave us, and the smoke was yellow. So it's a good thing that we were not making that film in color. Because
no, that was so interesting, because the people said, well, how would we get the mist? There was already mist, but in order for us to do that scene, it was to be the cameraman said that, Shubhrata said that we must have this mist cover the two figures and all of that. Well, so we said that we have to do something. So we went to the army to get the bombs, and we lit 4 bombs. Instead of 1, we lit 4 bombs, and we couldn't see anything. For almost half an hour, you couldn't see even the bodies who were there, and where was the camera, and where were the actors. Nothing could be seen. So the 4 bombs were lit.
But it was a yellow mist.
Yeah, but it was... Then we said, no, 1 bomb is enough. So we carefully lit 1 bomb, and then that just worked out so beautifully that when they kiss, the mist is there, and then they kiss, the mist parts, and you see their
So
faces.
why do you think that worked out?
It worked out because I was carrying the...
No, it's not.
yes,
There's
I
a
was
dissolve
carrying-
between the two.
No.
One where the mist comes,
I was
one where the
carrying
mist goes,
Jim,
and
you
there's a
forget.
nice dissolve
I
there.
was carrying the bomb.
Yeah, okay.
You know, all around. Using an imaginative way of approaching things, well, I mean, it's a perfect. The little example is that instead of going to get the permission from the railways, you know, to be on the railway compartments, you just bought the ticket and you travel from one station to the other station without asking the permission, because that would be a big hassle.
Nobody knew what we were doing in there with our
So
cameras
you
and
had the
stuff.
camera, you had the actors, and you had a long distance to travel. So if the scene is not finished, then you come back from that station back to the other station.
I don't think it even occurred to us to ask permission of anybody on those kinds of things. We just got on the train. We need a train set. Okay, well, let's all go on the train.
You know, without spending a dime. You know.
No, well, it's been something.
No, you don't spend a dime.
It was wonderful to meet. I nicknamed him Toto, and he was just the most. We had a love affair with each other. I just adored him, and he would shoot everything in the dark, and it had to be darker and darker to take all the lights out and take hours, because of course with Ray you could, I suppose. I think he looked after me in a way that was so subtle, a bit like Jim really, but Subroto was at that point much more experienced. I think he looked after me in a way that I didn't even realize, by putting me at my ease and telling me this and that and the other. But it wasn't anything that I was conscious of. It was just that he made me fall in love with him. A great big bear. He was heaven.
When we finished the film, Jim had this idea that it would be wonderful to ask Ray to do the music. So we took the film and we had the screening at the India Film Lab in Calcutta. It's a sort of a lab studio. And after the film, I mean, he enjoyed it so much that after the film he came out and he said, yes, he certainly, you know, he liked the film and he would love to do the music. And, you know, so how long do I have to do the music? So I said, a week. And he laughed at it and he said that only a week. I thought he would give me 3 days to do the music. You know, he had a great sense of humor, and you know, he particularly, I think, liked the approach of things to be very sort of, you know, direct and forceful, and I think there was something about him which was more an enormous encouragement, you know, to see young people or people who want to do things. He wanted to give them a helping hand, and that was really a very important thing for him. So he sat on his upright piano, you know, in his apartment, and he started to compose.
Well, he is supposed to have gone in there for 10 days. We weren't around. I think we went away and came back or something. He was supposed to have been there working on that for 10 days, and then which was what he said, it would take that long. And exactly at 10 days he came out, and anyway, so he had a big recording session, 2 of them. With the main theme of the film, and several themes were based actually on Indian ragas. I mean, the basic notes had come from Indian ragas, and though it may sound Western, they in fact they are Indian. The main theme of the film, which goes da 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 dee da 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 da. That comes from the rag Yaman, and to him it expressed, it gave an impression or an idea of philosophical resignation, and that was the principal theme. but there were other themes that he used.
And my eyes shall behold, and not another. He brought nothing into this world, and it is nothing now. The Lord gave, and the Lord.
Well, nobody wanted to release the film in America. They all said, oh, who? And in spite of this wonderful reviews at the New York Film Festival by every single critic, you know, they just wrote very highly.
And a success in England also. As soon as it opened in England several months earlier.
And they awarded the Berlin Film Festival. Nobody wanted it. So we four-walled the cinema, Baronet Cinema. We took the cinema, paid the rental, and we released it, put our own money for the publicity and promotion. And on the basis of the success of the film, the distributor Walter Reed said that he would take it up only after it made so much money. And then the film made a lot of money in the first week, and then we were with Walter Reed took the film and it was shown all over.
There's such a rejection of me, of everything I am, everything I've done.
Don't be silly.
Nowadays, why should they care?
When Geoffrey Kendall and his wife Laura saw Shakespeare Wallah, I think they were disappointed, because the film seemed to be a kind of negation of their own lives and their own careers. They thought of their lives in India, going around and doing Shakespeare all around India, and they thought of that as being a kind of triumph. And we showed it, and our emphasis on it and our take on the situation was that it was not a triumph at all, but it was a failure. And at least failure in terms of our film and our film story. And so I think that rubbed them the wrong way.
I think my father's impression of the movie was that I think he was a little cautious about the sadness of it. It's not maudlin, but it's a gentle sadness at the end of the film, of things no longer being what they were. The end of the British Raj and that kind of nostalgic, I suppose. And I think he felt that he had lived a life that was very positive and was still living a life that was very positive. And he also felt that he knew that one of the passions and the loves of his life, apart from Shakespeare and Milton and the Bible, was India. And he did not know at that time, he didn't see that the film showed his love of India. So I suppose he had that reaction as a personal reaction, because he wanted more of the glory and the fantastically funny times we had, and the very successful times, and then the terribly depressing times, because we didn't make any money or something went wrong.
And it took him a while to get used to the film, but then the film was very quickly, it became successful and was very well written about, and they were very well written about, and everyone liked the way they approached their roles and so on. And then gradually in time they came to accept it. But I think their initial reaction to it was one of disappointment.
He then saw it later, not when it wasn't quite so raw, and he thought it was a wonderful film. But I think he was so close to it, it couldn't possibly be a documentation of his life, and nor was it supposed to be.